Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to a new episode of our Letter to Vox podcast. Today, we are undertaking a truly grand literary journey. We're stepping back into the witty, the rigid, and the deeply complex world of one of history's most celebrated authors, Jane Austen.
And it's a journey that really shows you just how much of her foundational novel, Pride and Prejudice, was a direct reflection of the very specific, the social and financial pressures that just defined life back then.
Right, late 18th, early 19th century England.
Exactly. So we're doing a deep dive into the author herself, Jane Austen, and looking at how her writing evolved. And then we'll dissect the mechanics of her most famous work, paying really close attention to those intricate relationship dynamics that are just so rooted in economic necessity and social survival, really.
Our mission today is to move far beyond just the charming surface romance. I mean, we all love the romance, but we want to understand the profound stakes. When you talk about marriage in Austen's world, you're really talking about class mobility, you're talking about securing a home, and the brutal economic consequences of making a poor choice, especially if you're a woman.
Absolutely. And to do that, we're looking at this incredible stack of sources we have here, details about her life, and of course, extensive excerpts from the text of Pride and Prejudice itself.
And it's amazing, isn't it? Just looking at the biographical material, you see how valued her legacy is globally.
Oh, it's remarkable. Her life story and the analysis of her work, it exists in this huge multilingual list of languages.
Yeah.
I mean, from African Sans to Arabic to Japanese and Chinese.
It just underscores that her insights into human nature are completely universal.
Exactly. She's not just an English author. She's a global one.
So let's start with the writer herself, Jane Austen. That global reach you mentioned, I mean, that long list of translations, it's immediate proof that her social observations go way beyond a Georgian drawing room.
Right. They speak to these fundamental human truths. She's not just writing polite comedies of manners. She's writing about aspiration, about judgment, and about survival. And those are concepts that, they resonate absolutely everywhere.
Her writing career is usually split into two parts, isn't it? The early, more playful works, and then her later, more mature output.
That's the common way to look at it.
Yeah.
And those early pieces are fascinating. Our sources mention things like love and friendship.
And I love that the spelling, Freindsship, is intentional. It shows you her satirical tone right from the start.
It does. It's a parody.
Yeah.
And then you have the Three Sisters and the History of England.
What do those early works really tell us about her emerging voice?
They show her sharp, satiric eye and her early confidence in just parodying the popular novels of her time. She wasn't just observing society. She was skewering it with this incredible humor.
But even the fragments from her less productive middle period are proof of her immense value.
Oh, completely. We see this with the novel fragment, The Watsons. She started it around 1804, but never finished it.
And the economic proof of that value is it's astonishing.
It is, isn't it? So, The Watsons was published posthumously in 1871, but one of its surviving manuscripts was auctioned in July 2011 for, get this, £993,250.
Wow! Nearly £1 million.
For an incomplete work, and that was triple its estimated price. That tells you everything about the reverence and, the demands surrounding any physical piece of Jane Austen's legacy.
It's not just a writer, she's a cultural artifact of immense commercial value.
Precisely.
So moving past those early stages, we get to her later, what we call her mature works.
Right. These are the three novels that follow Pride and Prejudice and Sensibility. So you have Mansfield Park, Emma, and Persuasion.
And it's a very compressed period of just immense productivity right before she died.
A huge burst of creativity. And what's interesting is the publication schedule.
What do we see there?
Well, Mansfield Park and Emma were both published very quickly after she finished them. But Persuasion, that appeared posthumously. Jane Austen passed away just a few months after she completed it.
Was the shift in these later novels just about, polishing her style, or was there a more fundamental change in her themes?
There was a profound thematic evolution, and this is really key to understanding her trajectory as a writer.
How so?
While the central plot device is, it's consistently about a young woman who ends this story with a wedding.
Right. The happy ending.
The heroines and the situations differ significantly from her earlier, wittier pieces. And crucially, in these later works, Jane Austen introduced a clear, much stronger focus on sociopolitical themes.
And what does that mean in practical terms? What kind of themes are we talking about?
It means she moved from sort of mocking frivolous behavior to critically examining the very foundations of society itself. the rigidity of class, the role of the Navy in national identity, especially in persuasion, and the consequences of these big economic shifts.
So her analysis became much more serious.
Much more. Less purely satirical and more of a serious moral and economic critique.
That deeper, more serious context is so essential for reading her most famous work. But to understand Jane Austen the person, we face this notorious historical hurdle. Our sources call it the problem of the persona.
This is one of the greatest frustrations for any Jane Austen biographer.
Yeah.
It's just, we have a severe limitation of source material.
Why is that?
Because her beloved sister, Cassandra, destroyed the vast majority of Jane's personal letters before her own death.
That's an incredible loss, just an incredible loss of historical documentation.
It's staggering. The estimation is that of perhaps 3,000 letters Jane Austen wrote, only about 160 survive.
So few.
It just severely limits any real insight into her true personality. The surviving source material is described as very poor. We're left with this massive gap.
And I imagine that vacuum of primary sources was just ripe for other people to fill with their own preferred narrative.
That is precisely what happened. Her novels actually fell out of fashion during the height of the Victorian age.
Really, I wouldn't have thought that.
Yes, that era favored more melodrama, more heavy-handed morality. Interest was only really rekindled in 1869, when her nephew, James Edward Austen Leigh, published his biography, a memoir of Jane Austen.
So he essentially rebranded her for a new generation.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Our sources note he really tried to fit her image to the conservative tastes of the time. You know, the quiet, devout, proper spinster.
Into her Aunt Jane image.
Exactly. And this deliberate shaping of her persona resulted in extremely divergent views and approaches among all the later biographers. We're still wrestling with that initial filtered narrative today.
So was she the gentle, simple aunt or the sharp, observant wit who wrote these profoundly complex satires?
The surviving letters strongly suggest the latter, but the biographical record is permanently tainted by that Victorian attempt to, sanitize her. It's a crucial insight. We are reading an author whose life we know largely through this secondhand, heavily edited lens.
That biographical context sets the stage perfectly for entering the world of Pride and Prejudice. And Jane Austen, she wastes no time. She immediately drops us right into the economic reality with arguably the most famous opening sentence in literature.
The foundational thesis. A single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
And the text immediately clarifies this is not some philosophical musing. This truth is so fixed in the minds of the local families that such a man is instantly considered.
The rightful property of one of their daughters.
That tells you everything you need to know about the stakes, doesn't it?
It's a perfect opening. It positions marriage as this predatory economic exercise that's just disguised as social maneuvering. The arrival of a wealthy man is a supply-side event, and the local families are the demand side competing desperately to secure that resource.
And the whole novel is propelled by this underlying economic pressure.
It really is. The first catalyst is the arrival of Mr. Bingley. He rents Netherfield Park, a young man from the north with a large fortune, and he's moving in before October. And this immediately activates the central instrument of pressure in the book, Mrs. Bennet.
Oh, Mrs. Bennet. Her behavior is often hilarious, but it's rooted in this genuine existential terror.
Completely. She's described as a woman of little insight, little world knowledge, and many whims. And whenever she's dissatisfied or anxious, she claims to be suffering from nervous conditions.
It's not just a running gag, is it? Her anxiety is directly tied to her desperate knowledge of their precarious financial situation.
Exactly. And she is relentless in her campaign to get Mr. Bennet to visit Bingley immediately. She argues they can't possibly access him socially if her husband doesn't make that necessary first introduction.
She sees it as a business transaction that has to be done now.
Right. But Mr. Bennet, he's described as this peculiar mix of humor, composure, and quirky notions. And he just enjoys teasing his wife immensely. After 23 years of marriage, he still doesn't understand her.
Or maybe he doesn't want to. He'd rather mock her anxieties than soothe them. Maybe because he doesn't want to face the reality of the threat either.
That could be. And that silent threat is the true engine of Mrs. Bennet's desperation. It's the entailment. This is the detail we absolutely have to unpack for you to grasp the high stakes of every single interaction in this book.
The entailment is everything.
It is. Mr. Bennet's estate, Longbourn, it yields a respectable income of £2,000 a year. But, and this is the huge but, in the absence of any sons, the property is entailed to a distant relative, Mr. Collins.
Which is this cruel legal device. It ensures the estate stays whole, but it means that when Mr. Bennet dies, his 5 daughters get nothing from their father's main source of wealth.
Nothing. And the mother's fortune is just. It's simply not enough to save them.
How much did she have?
She inherited £4,000 from her family, which sounds like a decent sum, but divided 5 ways, it is absolutely insufficient to secure comfortable, independent lives for 5 women in that society.
So what's the alternative to a good marriage?
Destitution, or becoming a governess, or being dependent on relatives. This is why Mrs. Bennet's singular mission in life, marrying off her daughters as quickly as possible, it isn't just superficiality. It's an urgent survival strategy.
It's desperate, and the friction between the parents shows how differently they cope with this terror.
It does. When Mr. Bennet teases her about giving Bingley his approval to marry any of the girls, even Lizzie, Mrs. Bennet Jutton, she protests immediately.
Lizzie is no better than the others, she says. If you ask me, she's not nearly as pretty as Jane and not nearly as cheerful as Lydia, but you always prefer her.
Her priorities are entirely superficial looks and cheerfulness. That's what she thinks sells best on the marriage market.
But Mr. Bennet's reply is so cutting, yet it contains this deep affection for Elizabeth.
It does. He says none of them are particularly recommendable. They're all just as silly and stupid as other girls. Only Lizzie grasps things a little quicker than her sisters.
And that, from Mr. Bennet, is the highest praise. Just veiled in his usual sarcasm, he sees her intelligence, he values her wit.
He does, but that brief moment of recognition doesn't change the central truth. Elizabeth needs a rich husband just as much as her so-called silly sisters.
And the Meryton Ball is where all these hopes and anxieties, fueled by economic necessity, really boil over. It's a pressure cooker.
It really is. Bingley is agreeable, he's natural, he's instantly popular, but the real draw is his friend, Mr. Darcy.
Right. He attracts immediate attention. He's got a slim, tall figure, pleasant features, noble expression, and crucially, there's this rumor circulating about his huge income.
That income is the true measure of his gravitational pull.
Let's nail down these figures because they really contextualize the sheer desperation of this marriage market. Mr. Bingley inherited nearly £10,000 a year.
Which is a massive fortune. But Darcy's is even larger. It's rumored to be over $10,000 a year, maybe close to $15,000 from his massive estate, Pemberley.
These are astronomical sums compared to the Bennet's modest $2,000 a year.
The financial gulf is central. And there's also a subtle class distinction here. Bingley's fortune came from trade. His father was in business, making him new money.
Whereas Darcy is land rich. Centuries of family wealth, aristocratic lineage.
Exactly. And that distinction fuels the snobbery of Bingley's circle, especially his sisters.
Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley, they're described as elegant, but proud and conceited, and they have a fortune of their own, £20,000.
And yet they look down on the Bennets for their low family status, conveniently forgetting that their own brother's vast income came from commerce, which the landed gentry often viewed with disdain.
Their pride is a performance, isn't it? It's designed to distance themselves from their own origins.
It's all a performance.
Yeah.
And Darcy's own pride is established immediately by his conduct. He refuses to dance much, he stays aloof, and then he delivers the defining insult that just ignites Elizabeth's prejudice.
He says she's tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me, and Elizabeth overhears him.
A devastating public humiliation. And it's this moment that gives the novel its title. Mrs. Bennet, of course, just wishes he'd sprained his foot.
But Elizabeth's reaction is what turns this from a simple insult into the complex engine of the novel.
It is. When her friend Miss Lucas tries to rationalize Darcy's behavior because of his fortune, Elizabeth delivers that incredible line, "I could easily forgive him his pride if he had not injured mine."
That one line just encapsulates the entire psychological conflict.
It really does. She admits that society expects pride from a man of his status. Her issue isn't some abstract moral objection. It's personal. It's wounded self-respect.
Her prejudice against Darcy is rooted in vanity, a point she only realizes much, much later.
Right. She has prejudged his entire character based on a single personal slight to her self-esteem. And later, they have that fantastic exchange where he says he strives to avoid weaknesses like vanity and pride.
And she pushes him. And your fault, she says, is a tendency to hate all people.
And Darcy's perfect comeback. And yours is to willfully misunderstand everyone. It's this immediate, perfect assessment of their respective failings. She misreads him because her pride demands it. He judges others too quickly because his status allows him to.
You also see her sharp observation skills when she watches Miss Bingley trying so desperately to get Darcy's attention.
Oh, it's wonderful. She's praising his handwriting, his pen, his letter, just anything to get him to look up.
And Darcy receives her praise, completely unmoved. He just keeps reading his book.
It's a brilliant illustration of how manufactured charm and social climbing it completely fails against genuine indifference.
Okay, let's take a quick pause here. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoy this podcast. All right, we're back. And the story moves from the ballroom to the brutal realities of the marriage market, starting with Jane and Bingley. Jane falls in love quickly, but she successfully conceals her feelings.
She does, and this cautious approach is immediately scrutinized by her best friend, Charlotte Lucas.
Right. Charlotte, whose view of marriage is just cold, calculated, and pragmatic.
This conversation they have is absolutely central to the novel's core critique of society.
Charlotte argues that happiness in marriage is entirely chance.
Entirely. She cynically suggests that a couple's chances of happiness would be the same if they married tomorrow versus studying each other for a year. She thinks it's better to know a man's faults as little as possible before you secure the engagement.
It's just such a harsh economic truth for women without a fortune. Love, compatibility, those are luxuries. Marriage is a defensive strategy.
It's a transaction for security. And her cynical realism is immediately proven correct by the arrival of the man who embodies the family's greatest fear, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins, the distant relative, the man to whom Longbourn is entailed. He arrives after sending this bizarre formal letter to Mr. Bennet.
And he's just as he sounds, a tall, clumsy young man of 25, with a formal and imposing manner. He's a clergyman working for the formidable Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
And his reason for visiting is astonishingly transactional. He's looking for a wife from among the Bennet daughters as a kind of reparation for taking their inheritance.
It's a completely tone-deaf gesture of charity, isn't it? And his proposal to Elizabeth is a masterpiece of self-absorption and arrogance.
He lists his 3 reasons for marrying. First, it's a clergyman's duty. Second, it will ensure his own happiness.
And third, and most importantly, Lady Catherine told him to do it.
Right, she even gave him criteria. Choose a useful woman who can manage money and is not too aspiring. The woman is just an accessory to his status.
And when Elizabeth refuses, he can't even process it. Collins, insulated by his own pomposity, misinterprets her rejection as female delicacy and propriety.
He thinks she's just playing hard to get, the custom of refusing a man the first time.
Exactly. He's immune to genuine rejection because he thinks her choice is irrelevant.
This triggers the desperate parental conflict. Mrs. Bennet, seeing the one guaranteed path to solvency disappearing, demands Mr. Bennet force Elizabeth to say yes.
And Mr. Bennet responds with his famous ultimatum. It's a moment of profound, if sarcastic, loyalty to his favorite daughter.
Your mother insists on you marrying Mr. Collins. I forbid you to do so. Your mother will never see you again if you don't marry him, and I will never see you again if you do.
It's the ultimate relief for Elizabeth. She gets to keep her integrity, but it does absolutely nothing to solve the family's central problem. The entailment is still looming.
And she's just rejected the only guaranteed path to security.
Which immediately throws Charlotte Lucas's cynicism into sharp relief. Because just days after Elizabeth's refusal, Collins proposes to Charlotte.
And she accepts him.
Immediately. And her reasoning is stark. Marriage is the only honorable provision for well-educated young women without fortune. She knows her market value is diminishing.
So she chooses security over love or even respect.
She chooses protection from poverty.
Right.
And Elizabeth is shocked. She finds the choice incomprehensible. She calls Collins pompous, narrow-minded, and silly.
And this is the core philosophical split between the two friends, right?
Right.
Elizabeth prioritizes self-respect, Charlotte prioritizes survival.
Exactly. But the novel forces Elizabeth to realize that her privileged position of being able to choose integrity relies very heavily on external circumstances.
So while the economic imperative of marriage consumes Meryton, another character dynamic begins. And this one truly tests Elizabeth's judgment. I'm talking about the introduction of George Wickham.
Wickham is the perfect foil to Darcy, isn't he? He shows up as this charming officer with a winning address and pleasant manner. He's everything Darcy is not.
Accessible, complimentary, seemingly friendly.
He instantly confirms Elizabeth's prejudice against the haughty Darcy. And he plays the victim immediately, telling her this fabricated story that it fits perfectly with her preconceived notions.
He tells her that Darcy treated me scandalously.
Right. He claims that the elder Mr. Darcy, who was like a father to him, left him a church living a profitable position. But the younger Darcy denied him that patronage out of inherent pride and resentment.
And he paints himself as struggling on just 100 pounds a year.
And Elizabeth buys it. Hook, line, and sinker. It confirms her suspicion that Darcy's pride leads to cruelty. She is so convinced of Darcy's villainy.
But her prejudice blinds her to the truth. It takes Darcy's disastrous first proposal to force the issue.
It does. When she furiously rejects him, listing all his perceived crimes as ruining Wickham, separating Jane and Bingley Darcy, is finally compelled to deliver his counter-account in that long, detailed letter.
And this letter is the pivot point of the whole novel. It reveals the shocking, hidden truths about Wickham.
The first truth: Wickham was never interested in the church living. He willingly renounced his claim to it in exchange for a £3,000 cash payment.
Which he then squandered.
Quickly. Due to his extravagance and vice, Wickham wasn't a victim. He was a gambler and a liar.
But the ultimate transgression detailed in the letter is far darker. It concerns Darcy's younger sister, Georgiana.
This is crucial. Darcy reveals that Wickham later tried to elope with the 15-year-old Georgiana, whose fortune was £30,000.
So his motive was purely financial.
Purely. Money and possibly revenge on Darcy. Darcy intercepted them just in time after Georgiana confessed the plan. This makes Wickham not just irresponsible, but predatory.
And this forces Elizabeth into a profound and painful self-reckoning. She realizes she was willfully blind.
Her shame, grief, regret are immense. She trusted Wickham's smooth, charming facade and her own injured pride over any actual evidence. She finally sees that her prejudice against Darcy was rooted in her own vanity.
So she recognizes her own culpability. It's not just his pride, it's her prejudice.
Exactly. The hero and heroine are equally guilty of the flaw named in the title.
Having just learned the danger of appearances and the depth of Wickham's deceit, Elizabeth is immediately faced with a family disaster that proves the danger of uncontrolled youthful imprudence. I'm talking about Lydia's elopement.
This is the moment where the societal stakes become terrifyingly real.
So Lydia, the youngest, Mrs. Bennet's favorite, is described as a strong, well-grown girl of 15. She's obsessed with the officers and gets invited to Brighton, the military camp.
A disastrous environment for her. Elizabeth had warned her father earlier that Lydia's uncontrolled frivolity would bring disgrace on the family, but Mr. Bennet dismissed her fears.
And the disgrace arrives. Lydia elopes with Wickham, and crucially, they don't get married.
No. She writes this gleeful, clueless letter to Mrs. Forster, announcing she's going to Gretna Green, though they only made it to London. The utter lack of shame is what's truly damning.
The family is plunged into absolute social terror. An unchaperoned elopement without marriage means Lydia is morally ruined and outcast, and that shame extends to all her sisters.
It compromises their marriage prospects completely. The financial and social ruin is total.
And the parents' reactions just highlight their dysfunction. Mrs. Bennet is sick with worry, but still obsessed with wedding clothes.
While Mr. Bennet is profoundly shaken, he's finally forced to confront the consequences of his negligent parenting and travels to London to find them.
And their uncle, Mr. Gardner, successfully tracks them down, but only because of an unexpected intervention.
The secret hero.
Mr. Darcy.
Yes. Mr. Darcy had left Pemberley to track them down himself, driven by his sense of responsibility and his growing devotion to Elizabeth.
He found them. And this is the central defining act of his character. He undertook the massive, humiliating task of dealing directly with Wickham.
He paid Wickham's considerable debts and secured an annual income for them, all to force Wickham to marry Lydia. Wickham only agreed because of the money.
So Darcy literally bought the family's honor back at great personal and financial cost.
And at great personal risk. He was exposing himself to potential blackmail, and worse, associating his ancient family name with the disgraced Wickham, the man who tried to seduce his own sister.
And he did it all in secret.
All for Elizabeth's sake. This secret, immense sacrifice is what fundamentally transforms her prejudice into gratitude and eventually profound love.
And even after this immense rescue, Mrs. Bennet remains totally oblivious. She immediately starts worrying about money for a wedding dress.
She never grasps the true nature of their rescue. She's still focused on the superficial trappings of marriage, not the immense debt of honor and cash they've just incurred.
With the family crisis averted, thanks entirely to Darcy's hidden financial intervention, the narrative moves pretty swiftly towards resolution for the two main couples.
Yes, the first step is the reconciliation of Jane and Bingley. Darcy, having overcome his own pride, confesses to Bingley that Jane truly loved him.
And that overcomes Bingley's natural modesty and his reliance on Darcy's previous bad judgment. He proposes immediately.
But before Elizabeth and Darcy can unite, Elizabeth has to face down the physical embodiment of Darcy's social pride. His aunt, Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Oh, this scene is incredible. Lady Catherine travels all the way to Longbourn to demand a promise from Elizabeth.
That she will never marry Darcy because he's reserved for Lady Catherine's own daughter. It's a final, desperate attempt to enforce the rigid class hierarchy.
And she is at her most insulting. She details Elizabeth's low connections, her merchant uncle, her lack of social standing.
But Elizabeth's defiance is just. It's glorious. It's the final rejection of the aristocracy's claim to superiority.
When Lady Catherine says she'd be abandoning her milieu, Elizabeth fires back with that brilliant line.
He's a gentleman. I am the daughter of a gentleman. In that regard, we are equals. She refuses to be intimidated.
And her refusal, her dignified impertinence, is the final signal to Darcy that Elizabeth has the strength he loves. It encourages him to try again.
Which leads to the second proposal. Darcy proposes again, confessing his enduring love despite her family's disgrace.
And Elizabeth accepts, acknowledging her feelings have undergone so fundamental a change.
She has shed her prejudice, and he has shed his pride.
And her witty reflection on how her affection developed is essential. She says her love developed so gradually that I hardly know myself.
But then she jokes that it truly began when she first caught sight of his beautiful park at Pemberley.
It's a masterful joke. It's not just materialism. Her love didn't start with the house itself, but with the moment she visited Pemberley and saw the evidence of his true character from his housekeeper. Right. The observation of his goodness, which the property represents, came before her acceptance of the financial security. The park is a metaphor for his virtue and his wealth combined.
Exactly. And the novel wraps up with these really realistic outcomes for everyone. Kitty improves, separated from Lydia's bad influence.
And the Wickhams.
They remain completely true to their irresponsible nature, constantly moving, constantly in debt, depending on small sums from Jane and Elizabeth. Wickham's feelings for Lydia dwindle, but she gets to keep the reputation of a married woman solely because of Darcy's money.
A life that's a continuous financial burden on the good sisters.
It is. And Darcy and Elizabeth settle at Pemberley. Georgiana, his sister, admires Elizabeth immensely and learns from her about female agency. Even Lady Catherine eventually comes around.
So it's a happy ending, but it's remarkably realistic. It's a happy ending that was purchased at an immense concealed price.
So to summarize this deeply satisfying look at Jane Austen and her world, we can return to the central statements from our sources and distill them into 4 key takeaways.
Okay, first, the biographical context. Jane Austen's personal life remains fragmented, largely because her sister Cassandra destroyed most of her letters. However, her body of work shows this clear evolution toward deeper socio-political critique in her mature novels.
Second, the thematic insight. Pride and Prejudice is a brilliant study in economy and social pressure. That opening line sets the tone. Marriage is explicitly viewed as the only honorable provision against the existential threat of poverty, driven by the Bennet family's entailment problem.
Third, the character complexity. The core journey is deeply psychological. Elizabeth has to overcome her prejudice, which is rooted in wounded vanity, and Darcy has to overcome his pride, which is rooted in aristocratic prejudice, for them to recognize true worth in each other.
And finally, the secret hero. The entire resolution hinges on Darcy's immense selfless act. His willingness to sacrifice his reputation and a substantial amount of money to save Elizabeth's sister Lydia is the definitive moment. That hidden financial transaction is what transforms Elizabeth's prejudice into gratitude, respect, and finally, love.
So while Jane Austen's novels famously end with happy marriages, the text really reveals that true happiness is often rooted not just in sentiment, but in these huge, often hidden financial sacrifices and the painful need to confront one's own biases.
Which raises a final provocative thought for you to consider. In a world where status and survival were so linked, and for Elizabeth the threat of destitution was very real, how much of the true love we celebrate in literature actually relies on these unacknowledged economic transactions? Transactions that the characters themselves only later discover were essential for their union. It suggests that true worth is often measured by what you're willing to sacrifice.